Hey, it's Ramon. Here's something from the Michael Berry Show you may have missed. Brought to you by Oops Steam Cleaning.
The Michael Berry Show.
New York City now has a $15 an hour minimum wage. This is from Sandy Peterson. The socialist paradise of New York City entered into nirvana earlier this year when the minimum wage in the city was raised to $15 an hour. As soon as the clock ticked over into 2019, the sky filled with rainbows and every worker was able to make a living, waiting tables or cleaning toilets. Well, not exactly. In response to the mandated rise in wages, many restaurant owners are doing the only things they can to keep control of their labor costs, cutting hours and cutting jobs. CBS New York reports John Bluestein operates 6 New York City restaurants that employ between 50 and 110 people each. The owner of Heartland Brewery in Houston Hall, Bluestein, said the effect of the higher minimum wage on payroll across locations represents, quote, an immense cost to his business. We lost control of our largest controllable expense, he told CBS Money Watch. So in order to live with that and stay in business, we're cutting hours. Bluestein said he has scaled back on employee hours and no longer uses hosts and hostesses during lunch on light traffic days. Customers instead are greeted with a sign that reads, kindly select a table. He also staggers employees' start times. These fewer hours add up to a lot of money in restaurants. Bluestein said he's increased menu prices as well. Other owners say that they're combining and cutting positions. You see, it seems to make sense to just say, restaurant owners, pay your employees more. Pay them all a minimum of 15. Well, that, of course, means that the guy who's making 14 now, next to the person who just started last week and is making 10, if you bump them up to the same, the guy who was making 14 says, wait a minute, I've been here for 5 years. It took me years to get built up to this pay rate. Now that guy's getting the same thing I'm getting. So now 14 guy has to go up to 20. So now you've added that cost in. Well, where do you find this money? The liberal model has to keep as a static, it cannot be a variable. They have to be able to plug in that owners make a lot of money. Because if they actually understood or if they cared that most businesses run on very small margins. Now, you may say to yourself, how do businesses run on small margins if the people who own businesses drive nice cars? Those people are up to their necks in eyeballs. Up to their eyeballs in debt, exactly the way you are. Most of them are giving the appearance that they have money. They just have bigger debts than you do. They have bigger debts and more worries than the rest of us. And that's true. Everything is leveraged. That's usually the case. Very infrequently is there actual cash. Now, you may say, well, that's not true. Old Bob died. When he died, he had all this money. That's because Bob ran his business for 30 years, never moved, never went anywhere else, worked every weekend, worked every night. And during that time, he was paying for the building, for the land, so that at the end of all that, when he died, his widow sells the land and recoups all that money. But Bob never saw it. Bob was steady trying to make payroll every month and the property note every month. And the alcohol for supplies and the meats and pay the lawyers and settle lawsuits and all the inspections and everything that went with it. He had to do all of that. But slowly but surely he was building up an asset that he would never be able to enjoy the fruit of. So how can it be that guy, how can it be that his wife bought a $5 million house and lives like she's rich? He was rich. He got rich off all those employees. No. He barely paid the bills every month. This is so typical. The kinds of people who do that, they operate such a thin margin, but they end up owning the business, or in the best case, owning the property. And every month, they barely get it all paid off. And then they flip the calendar and they start again. And they do that for 400 months in a row until they finally paid off that piece of property. And the value of real estate in that area went up for over 30 years. So finally, at the very end, on the back end, they can sell that, and what was built penny by penny is worth something to sell it to the next guy and let him start the whole process all over again. That's what we're doing. But if that guy was making a 1 or 2% profit and you increase your taxes on that business, all the various ways you do, you put that guy out of business, which means he doesn't own that property, which means instead of being a buyer, he's a seller. So now you flood the market with properties. Eventually, that creeps down to the lowest levels. And now property is devalued. And now those people lose their jobs, so now they're competing with everyone else for lower wages jobs. The unintended consequences of this envy.
MichaelBerry.com